Welcome to Introduction to Educational Research. Today's video is the research process part 1. The purpose of this video is to briefly introduce the two major research paradigms, which are referred to as qualitative research methodologies and quantitative research methodologies. And secondly, to present the various functions or purposes that educational research serves. The graphic on your screen is an excellent example of the general steps involved in the research process, and you may want to keep it in mind because it may come in handy as you are developing your master's thesis or field project. All right, well, we're going to start from a very big picture. We're going to begin by taking a look at the overall function of the grand picture of scientific research. Well, consider the white circle on your screen as all of the knowledge that's known and unknown in the entire universe. And consider the overall purpose of scientific research. It is to discover, to describe, to predict, and control the laws of the universe. Well, each time a researcher conducts a valid and reliable study, they add to the knowledge we have. They partially fill in the void or the white space of what is not known. As the process of scientific research continues, more and more of the void becomes known. So assume that each square on your screen represents a piece of research that adds to our knowledge base. And if you will, picture the different colors representing different disciplines like psychology, astronomy, biology, physics, education, chemistry, and so on. As science moves forward, more and more of the knowable universe becomes known, and the old antiquated knowledge and theories are thrown out. There is a progression from less understanding to more understanding. However, there is and always will be areas of the universe, or in our metaphor, the white circle, that are unknown to us at any given point in time. In the big picture, this is the grand function of scientific research: to methodically, step by step, discover the known and reveal new truths. That sounds like a Star Trek line, doesn't it? Sorry about that. Well, let's leave the grand picture of all of scientific research and take a look at the universe of educational research. The function or purpose of educational research is exactly the same as that of scientific research, only the knowable universe here is now the universe of education. When conducting research, there are two very, very different methodologies or approaches that researchers employ to try and answer the questions that they ask. These two methodologies are referred to as the quantitative research methodology and the qualitative research methodology. And the interaction of both of them are represented on your screen. And they are actually two sides of the same coin. They are very different, although they do complement each other. Qualitative and quantitative research methodologies stem from totally different philosophical assumptions that shape the way researchers approach problems, ask questions, and collect and analyze data. Well, let's take a look at the qualitative. Qualitative research is based on a philosophical approach referred to as relativism, which uses the individual and her or his world as so interconnected, so intertwined, that essentially the one has no existence without the other. It sees social reality as absolutely unique. Thus, researchers can only understand human behavior, according to this philosophical position, by focusing on the meanings that events have for the people involved in those events. And this is the relativistic view. The researcher has an inside view of the research, and the researcher is part of the research. They interact. There are multiple realities that are sought after. One's perceptions determine what those multiple realities are. There is a search for subjective meaning versus absolute truths. And knowledge is considered contextual. It's influenced by the context that it's presented in. And if you remember the video on theory of knowledge, a lot of times the images were presented in a certain context that distorted or changed what the image was. So the knowledge that was received was we had to rely on the context that it was presented in. And it sees, pardon me, knowledge as dynamic, it changes. It's shaped by culture. It's shaped by experience. A good example of this approach is Jane Goodall's Gorillas in the Mist, where I think she was in East Africa and spent maybe 20, 30 years living in the jungle, observing the gorillas, and in her terms, interviewing them in their own language, not our language. That is the relativistic approach. Now, in contrast, the quantitative research methodology takes the philosophical position referred to as realism and sees the world consisting of general principles or laws that govern the social world just as they do the physical world, and that through objective procedures such as observation and experimentation, researchers can discover these principles and apply them to an understanding of human behavior. And this is realism. The researcher has an outsider's view. The researcher stays back and away from the research and the subjects. They're looking for general principles to uncover general principles and laws. The belief is a reality or truth exists. Even if we don't know it right now, it still exists. And it can be measured, it can be studied through uncovering of scientific laws and experimentation. Now, it sees reality as static, doesn't change. It's context-free, it doesn't matter the context. And the emphasis on explaining, predicting, and controlling. So that is the quantitative approach. Again, these are two very different philosophical approaches to answering questions in the scientific community. Well, okay, we're going to take a closer look at this distinction between the quantitative and qualitative research methodologies by examining the differences in their approaches to the research question, the purposes of the research, the focuses, the research designs, and the data analysis procedures. Now, qualitative research, as you can see on the left side of your screen, works from the bottom up. It starts out by pure observation, and it collects a great deal of narrative data. And then it starts to look for patterns in that data. And certain patterns and categories start to bubble up. And then a tentative theory or hypothesis may be developed. And eventually a theory may come out of that bottom-up approach. And that is the inductive approach. So there's observation. So you observe some things and you start to look for patterns. And once some patterns start to appear, then a hypothesis or a theory may come out of that. But the approach is from the bottom up. Now, the deductive or quantitative research methodology, its approach is deductive. It works from the top down. It starts with a theory, then hypotheses, then data collection, and then a confirmation or rejection of the hypothesis. Let me give an example. Since the 16th century, scientists have been interested in the nature of light. Specifically, just what is light? What's it made of? Well, there existed two competing theories. One was that light was made of particles emanating from some source. And the other was that light was made of waves that emanated from some source. So there was a theory about light. Scientists posed hypotheses, they tested the theory, and then they either confirmed or rejected it. And here's a silly little example. The hypothesis: when I examine light under the magnifying glass, I'll be able to see whether it's a particle or a wave. Okay, so the cat, as the scientist, is proposing an experiment. You're going to examine particles, the light under the magnifying glass, and see whether it's particle or wave. So the researcher examines the light, and his colleague says, what do you see? And the researcher says, a bug. Light is a bug. So he rejects his initial hypothesis and assumes light is a bug. Now, that's just a silly example to demonstrate the top-down method. There is a hypothesis, then there is data collection, and then a confirmation or rejection of the hypothesis. Present-day scientific thinking is that light, under certain circumstances, may be a wave or it may be a particle. And it's called the wave duality theory. That's the present-day theory. Two different ways of understanding reality: the qualitative research methodology and the quantitative research methodology. Now, in terms of the purposes of research, the purpose of the qualitative research is to describe or otherwise understand educational phenomena by developing deep personal understanding of the people involved, by describing their multiple realities. It's looking to capture everyday life, or in terms of Goodall, in their own language, and uncover human perspectives. Whereas the purpose of the quantitative research is to understand educational phenomena by developing and testing existing theories through hypothesis testing, by establishing facts based on these theories and using these facts to make predictions. The goal of both approaches is the same: to uncover reality. However, the process is quite different. Now, in terms of research focus, the focus of the research, the qualitative research focuses on looking at the context of the situation, developing deep, rich understandings. The researcher is part of the process and interacts with participants and collects face-to-face, generally face-to-face narrative data. Whereas quantitative research focuses on control and isolation of variables. The researcher is removed from the research situation, is anonymous, and it uses formal tests and formal data collection procedures, and generally works with large samples, whereas The qualitative may work with smaller samples. Now, research design. By the way, research design refers to the type of plan that will be used to carry out the study. Qualitative research designs start out sort of vague, with some vague ideas, and they're allowed to evolve. They're very flexible. They're tentative. The procedures are tentative. And the whole research plan is very fluid and dynamic and can change as the research and data collection goes on. Quantitative is very, very different. The plan is developed prior to the study. The whole plan is laid out specifically prior to the study. The data collection procedures and analysis is very structured, already written down. They're very formal procedures, and it's very static in nature. And finally, the data analysis. Well, qualitative data, which is narrative in nature, is analyzed by a logical inductive data analysis, which is a thought process that uses logic to make sense of certain trends and patterns that bubble up out of the observations, and using the extensive narrative that was collected. Quantitative research analysis is very, very different. It uses statistical analysis, either descriptive statistics, which you know as mean, the median, the mode, the range, and it uses inferential statistics. And it presents its results in terms of probability statements. An important point for you to keep in mind is that research does not prove anything. It doesn't really prove anything. It makes probability statements. We can say with a high degree of probability, 95% degree of probability, that treatment X caused the change in treatment Y, caused the change in behavior Y. So it's a probability statement based on accepting or rejecting research hypotheses. That's the quantitative. Okay, again, two very distinct approaches to scientific questions and how to answer scientific questions: qualitative and quantitative. If you can picture the monk and his disciple walking through the woods, and they come to a river, and they're in the middle of the bridge crossing over the river, and the disciple says, "Oh, please, Master, tell me about the river." So the master pulls out a book and opens it up, and it has a whole bunch of statistical data on the river. How many gallons per minute the river flows, how deep the river is, the different temperatures in the river, the salinity of the water, all kinds of data. That would be a quantitative response. The qualitative response, the monk would pick the disciple up and throw the disciple in the river and shout down to him, "You must become part of the river to understand the river." That's basically sort of a metaphor for the difference in these two approaches. Again, two very different philosophical positions that differ very much in their approach, but their function or purpose is the same: to understand reality. We're now going to take a look at some reasons for educational research. As stated earlier, the purposes or functions of educational research are exactly the same as that of scientific research, only the knowable universe is now the universe of education. On the bottom of your screen are 4 red boxes representing the 4 major purposes or functions of educational research: basic or applied, evaluation, and action research. Basic research involves the processes of developing and enhancing theory, and also producing products or programs. It's governed by strict scientific methods and controls. It's literally doing research for the sake of doing research. It's your white-coated, horn-rimmed glasses scientist in a lab watching the rats run around a maze or something like that. And there is no preconceived immediate social utility or application of the research. It's just research for research's sake. You can see the cartoon there. I was just rubbing sticks together for fun. I didn't realize I was doing basic research. A good example would be B.F. Skinner on the work that he did with pigeons and reinforcement. Some of the old movies from the 40s are absolutely amazing, where you see pigeons playing ping pong and all kinds of things like that. That's basic research. The other side of the coin of basic research is applied research. Again, these are like, again, two sides of one coin. And you can see the comparisons there on the bottom. Applied research is done to test theories in the field to achieve better validity. So basic research develops theories, applied research tries them out in the real world. And applied research is interested in finding a solution for an immediate problem facing society. Basic research is not interested in any social utility, it's just interested in discovering knowledge. So these are two different approaches in research, basic and applied. Evaluation research is interested in making decisions about the quality and the effectiveness or value of educational programs or products or practices. The focus is on making decisions about effectiveness and not on the development of new knowledge or theories. And from your own teaching, you know, formative evaluation consists of monitoring the ongoing progress of a program or product or practice, and the summative evaluation would be judging the overall impact of a program, product, or practice. So another purpose of research is evaluation research. And finally, there is action research. And this is in your book. In fact, I think you had chapter 1 in your first assignment. So there's some good explanations of action research, and it uses scientific research methods to examine local problems in your classroom or in your school or in your district. These are local problems that may not generalize outside of the action research, your own action research. And it's research done by educators for educators. It's not some bigwig passing down some stuff to teachers and telling them what they should do. This is researchers, this is educators discovering their own problems, researching their own problems, creating their own plans, and implementing. And it's usually a systematic inquiry into your own teaching. There are many different models, obviously, and the one on your screen right now is basically what all the models have in common. So you observe, you reflect, you plan, you act. And some of you may very well wind up doing a piece of action research as your master's thesis project, field project or thesis. Okay, so these are the 4 purposes or functions of educational research. They are the reasons we carry out research and contribute to the canon of knowledge concerning education. Okay, now below is a grid representing the 2 different research methodologies. So you can see research methodologies, and it has qualitative on one side and quantitative on the other. And the 4 research functions presented in the video. And you can see down the left side the research functions: basic, applied, evaluation, and action. Your task is to select a broad topic to investigate. In the example on the screen, the broad topic I selected was development of a data collection system for classroom use. See the red box right below the qualitative and quantitative research box. in the development of a data collection system. Now, you can see box number 1 is basic research using a qualitative research methodology. Box number 2 is a basic research using a quantitative research methodology. Box 3, applied research using qualitative research methodology. 4 is applied research with a quantitative research methodology approach. Box 5 is evaluative qualitative research methodology. Box 6, evaluative quantitative research methodology. Box 7, qualitative research, action research and qualitative research methodology. And box 8 is action research and quantitative research methodology. Now, your task is to select a broad topic that you would hypothetically like to research, and then to present the scenario in each of the boxes. So as an example, let me give you an example. In box 1 represents a basic research project using the qualitative research methodology techniques and assumptions to study developing a data collection system for classroom use. So let's take a look at box 1. A qualitative research methodology will be used to interview teachers concerning their data collection needs, their data collection knowledge experience, and their attitudes toward collecting data in their classroom. The goal is to get a deep understanding of teacher perspectives concerning data collection. So that certainly, looking for teacher understanding and using interviews, that is certainly a qualitative methodology, and it's a basic piece of research. Whereas if you take a look at box 4, let's say, box 4 represents an applied research project using the quantitative research methodology techniques and assumptions to test the effectiveness of the computerized data collection system. So here's box 4. The computerized data collection system developed in quadrant 2 will be implemented in 4 third-grade classrooms. Data will be collected on the effects of data collection on student academic performance. Well, that's absolutely a quantitative approach, and it's an applied approach because it's testing out something that was developed under basic research, which was the computer program. One more example. Box 5 represents an evaluation research project based on qualitative research methodologies, focus groups, and individual interviews to answer the questions, which system was viewed as the most effective and why? And let's look at box 5. Teacher focus groups and individual interviews will be used to assess teacher attitudes towards 2 different computerized data collection systems used in their classroom. The question, which system was viewed as the most effective and why? Now that's an evaluation perspective, and it's using qualitative research methodologies. So there is a homework sheet that comes with this assignment. And you're asked to answer 16 questions, and then at the end of those 16 questions, there is a place where you can type in your broad topic, and then there are 8 different headings, and you can use, just like, you don't have to reproduce the boxes like I did. You can just use it in paragraph form. But you address your overall basic question from the basic qualitative perspective, the basic research quantitative perspective, the applied research qualitative perspective, the applied research quantitative perspective, the evaluation research qualitative perspective, and the evaluation research quantitative perspective, and then the action research qualitative perspective and the action research quantitative perspective. And you can look at the model that's presented here. Well, here are the resources that were used in developing this video, just in case you are interested. Thank you very much for your time. See you next time.